I'm here to talk about managing transition and preparing students for hybrid or Hyflex learning. And if you watch the first two episodes, okay, you will know that this is actually a logical continuation of our discussions in the first episode conducted by Sir Jim, second episode, and this is the third episode. This is an opportunity for us to learn. And I would like to emphasize this opportunity, as mentioned by Sir Ken Robinson, that there is an opportunity. This pandemic is an opportunity. It takes bravery and imagination, and we have plenty of that in store. Teachers are a source of imagination and, of course, bravery. We are courageous to continue to ensure that learning continues. In the first episode, Jim Toscano mentioned these four guiding words he mentions: no? Context, well-being, quality, safety, and equity. When he mentioned something about context, he was emphasizing that each situation, each school has its unique context, right? We have to know the circumstances of our schools. We have to know the reality in our schools. In episode number 2, Jessica de Miguelio mentioned, again, the context. If you are looking at the spaces, no, on your infrastructure, you have to know how many students do you have? How many students are willing to come for face-to-face or in-person teaching and learning? Look at the teachers and staff. How many will be ready to conduct face-to-face? Again, looking at the context of your school. The UNICEF was actually mentioning, because of these school closures, that the lack of in-person interaction with peers tremendously impacts children's emotional and cognitive development. The missed opportunity for immediate teacher-learner interaction on the lessons delays competency development of the learner and has serious impact on quality learning. More and more studies are being conducted on the impact on learning, the learning loss. In the first episode, Jim once again mentions, nire-review ko kayo ha, kung natandaan niyo yung first episode ha. Okay? Jim mentions that gap from the learner, from the time that the learner was not in the classroom to the time that you see the students, there will be a gap. Or those learning from home or learning face-to-face, there will always be a gap. So you must be able to bridge that gap and you know your students. And you know, in the Philippines, sabi nga sa Bible, the first is the last and the last is the first. We are the last to implement face-to-face, no, or in-person teaching. No worries, we can learn from the experience of the other schools or the other countries. But definitely, the UNICEF reminded us that there is a learning loss. There's an impact on quality learning. The more you prolong distance learning, the more you prolong the students don't go to schools, the more that you impact quality learning. They really have to go back to the classroom. Okay? And so the DepEd, if you remember, in September, okay, announced that there are 120 schools chosen for pilot face-to-face classes. Okay? Now, take note for pilot face-to-face. So I asked myself, if we think of pilot face-to-face, that has something to do with flying. Can you remember how our airports look like? It can be congested, right? So if you're going to plan for something and to pilot it, you have to take note of your infrastructure. Second, if you talk about pilot face-to-face, you need pilots. So my presentation now will follow the analogy of what do pilots do? What do they do when they plan before actually taking flight? And so I'm going to talk to you about the systems check that pilots normally do. And hopefully the systems check will guide you, whether you are a school administrator or a teacher, in preparing for your face-to-face or in-person or hybrid teaching and learning. The first stage is, of course, information. The second stage is consultation. The third stage is simulation. And the fourth stage is implementation. All throughout the four stages, the most important feature is communication. Pilots would communicate with the tower, with the airport. Pilots would communicate with each other. Pilots would communicate with the cabin crew. Okay, so when you plan, before you take flight, there are a lot of things you have to check. Let's start first with information. February 2021, I was already planning for hybrid. I looked at the hybrid model of other countries, and there are many studies. There is one landmark study conducted by Romanian University. There's another one in the Netherlands and another one in Australia. So if you want to know more about hybrid, these are the countries that where I got the sources from. I looked at the hybrid Hyflex learning models. Okay, so because hybrid and Hyflex is not really new, it was not invented during the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, there were already experts that were talking about hybrid, Hyflex, or blended learning or flexible learning. And then I crafted my proposal. After I crafted my proposal, we are fortunate to have our consultation. And there's this instrument that all of us, all the school administrators have mastered already. I'm sure the administrators of Xavier looked at this document of DepEd. It's called the SSAT, or the School Safety Assessment Tool, for the pilot study on the face-to-face learning modality. This became our Bible as we transition to hybrid learning. The School Safety Assessment Tool is multiple pages with tables that like a checklist that you have to accomplish each one before DepEd can say you can start with your pilot implementation of face-to-face, or in our case, hybrid. This actually is a good tool, and kudos to DepEd for constructing this tool. And I heard that they revised this tool, that they have a new version, an easier version for those schools that we will start next year. Swerte kayo, no? Xavier, Sir Jim's school, and my school, we had to use the tool, the original tool that was voluminous, but at the same time, very helpful. And the consultation also I did with IATF through the DOH and the local government unit. When we already accomplished the safety assessment tool, the DepEd, DOH, Taguig, LGU visited us on November 12. So we were right smack into the Delta. Okay, we were already planning still for the face-to-face implementation. If you can see here on the left, I presented our hybrid plan to our guests from DepEd, Taguig, LGU, and DOH, and on the right, they made a tour and gave some recommendations on how to improve your school to be ready for face-to-face before you get DepEd approval. Just 4 days after, the representative of Secretary Briones, Director Andaya, visited our school again on November 16. And this was the scariest moment of my life because Director Andaya is the representative of Secretary Briones of the central office. And it is Director Andaya who will say if you can start and implement your face-to-face classes. We learned a lot from this consultation. The DepEd, the DOH, and the Taguig LGU looked at our physical plan, looked at our documents, and they also asked the most important question: which students are participating in your hybrid teaching and learning, in your hybrid plan? Okay, this is an important feature that you have to answer. In the previous episode, okay, Jessica mentioned this. You have to know which students are participating because not all are ready to participate.